a project that I've just recently become involved with. So there's a partnership between the First Nations Major Projects Coalition and the BC Assembly of First Nations. So this partnership and this project in particular is being led by Mark Podlasley. And Mark Podlasley is an Indigenous practitioner and consultant, and he's been involved with a lot of projects in BC. But this particular what he was doing through the summer was preparing a report that challenges or makes the case too for why GDP is in essence a very blunt measure of economic well-being. And so a report came out in November that talks about, what are the limitations of GDP as an economic measure. And of course, this is not a new conversation. There's been global conversations about the merits of GDP as a measure. But the task that Mark Podlasley really wanted to tackle in this was making this case in order to also make some space for Indigenous voices within defining economic measures as well. And so it was actually really, and so my involvement in the project is Mark knows that other countries in the world have made great strides with finding alternatives to GDP measures. One of the countries is Aotearoa, New Zealand. New Zealand released a well-being budget in January of 2019. And this is really exciting because what you'll see in the report as well, I think is one of the best pieces of this report that Mark put together is at the end of it, there's a report card about different models for measuring well-being. And he was filtering that through the lens of insights that are coming from Indigenous perspectives. And the only example that really incorporated Indigenous principles of well-being was from Aotearoa, New Zealand. And so Mark knew that I was there for 9 years and was studying with many of my colleagues were advising actually, the New Zealand government in that process of devising the well-being budget. And so Mark wanted me on the project so that I can, for some, there's some aspects of networks, but also just from the work that I do as well from Coast Salish philosophies of well-being and wealth, and being able to kind of reframe, as I described from the work I did in my PhD, what is the purpose, or what is the ultimate goal of what it is we're trying to achieve when we talk about economic well-being and wealth, or prosperity even, and it's a project as well that is very much BC centric, that the province of BC has expressed great interest in supporting development of alternative measures to the GDP model. And so that's the work that I'm looking forward to doing, is really digging into to really defining actually these deep questions around Indigenous well-being. The language that is comes forward most often is a good life. How do we think about what a good life is how that's constituted? I have a story in the back of my mind that really I can't move away from this idea that one of the interviewees in my PhD research was talking about, what is it that by the end of our lives, sort of what is the point of our lives? This came up in some of the dialogue within the interview. And one of the things he said was that by the end of our lives, we are as whole as we can be. That the journey of living and our collective living together is that by the end of our lives, we are as whole as we can be. And this really stuck with me because I thought, yes, this encompasses so much of the individual experience, that each person's journey of learning and development and experience matters so much, but it matters because we're part of this greater story as well of collective wholeness, that together we become whole as well. And that, I think, is what is expressed within ceremony and within our economies, is that that the human development is so much dependent on our relationships with one another, and that ultimately that is the goal, that is the purpose of our interactions and our relationships with one another.